Are you planning on returning to Animal Crossing after many years of neglect? Well, I made something to give you a glimpse of what your island may look like after it has fallen into a state of decay. Strangely enough, I started working on this before the new update was announced. I just thought it would be a quick filler in between project for some larger projects that I was working on, and I'm typically about 3 to 5 years out of relevancy for any project that I make, so this is a first for me. This project started because I wanted to make something for my wife that was relatively simple, but would still be kind of cool to look at. And I've always liked the concept for the worlds that we interact with, whether it's through books or video games or other sorts of media. These imaginary worlds have a bit of a life of their own. Maybe I'm just describing the plot of Toy Story and I'm a child. Anyways, underdeveloped prefrontal cortex aside, this building needed some wood. I sip in my dome, see the order. Gossip appearing slowly in my room until I'm bored. I found that whenever I'm making a building where the exterior is wood, or honestly making any sort of wooden structure, it's much easier to use thin sheets of textured XPS foam and then cut them into wooden boards. It also gives a much more believable look because they are actual individual wooden boards that you're just attaching to a structure. And the structure can be made out of cardboard or foam. I'm using foam because I had a lot readily available. And then I made the roof out of chipboard with some foam layered on top. I was really excited to do this project because everything I've typically done is high fantasy, so I've never really done any sort of rust effect or metal effect outside of armor. The part that you see me making now is actually supposed to be a window, and I didn't find that out until much later. If you can hear the sniffling in the back, that's my dog having a cute little puppy dream. Boy. The next thing I started working on was the sign. I knew for this to be recognizable at all, this was going to be a critical piece, otherwise it may just look like some sort of abandoned building. So I ended up actually doing some measuring and heavily using a reference from a screenshot of the game, and overall I was pretty happy with the result, so much so that I avoided actually weathering it until the very end because I thought I was going to destroy it. I wanted the exterior paint of the building to look like it was coming off or decaying. Actually ended up having some crackle paste that I had never used. So I did a couple of test splotches just to see how it turned out, applying it at different thicknesses and with different paint mixture ratios. I wanted to use some thin plastic to do broken windows, so I took advantage of this opportunity to get some Arkham packs. I cut out a ton of different pieces, and no matter what I did, they all seemed to kind of look like cartoon broken glass. So if anyone has any ideas of how to not make it look like this and give more of a realistic effect outside of using real glass, let me know. Whenever you make wood with foam and a wire brush, it's best to do the base paint coat with a wash because the details are so fine that paint will just build up into the cracks and crevices and totally obscure everything that you've done. For the rust effect on the top, I started out by painting the entire roof with a silver base coat. After this, I had a rust effect paint by the Army Painter that I stippled on with a wiry type of brush. After that, I moved on to adding the blues. So I used some of the same brush, and then I also used some art sponges so it could give it a splotchy look. For painting the building, it followed about the same order as the roof, starting with the base coat of what you want it to be, and then adding in the grime and weathering, and then putting the paint on top. So I added the grime with a green wash and a black wash, also did some dry brushing, and then I went around and added some of the crackle paste mixed in with some yellow ink. I put this on strategically, avoiding the areas that I heavily weathered as if the paint had already been eaten through and molded, and then after it was down, I put a little bit of additional wash on top to blend it all together. After that was done, I put the broken windows in place, and I wanted to have the doors chained shut, so I used a chain from an old cheap piece of jewelry to put it around and secured it in place with a dab of super glue. For the window awnings, I used a cloth napkin that I dipped in some watered down Mod Podge. This is to make it a little bit more stiff so I can work with it more easily. And then after that was done, I painted it with a series of washes so that it would just absorb into the fabric. And it was still pretty stiff, and this allowed me to crumple it up, which gave it a really good weathered look, and then I added some holes as well. I wanted to build up the illusion of mold, and to do this I wanted to use a black flock and a white flock, but I didn't have any. The way I make my flock is sawdust and paint in an old coffee grinder. This takes about 30 seconds per flock. You don't need to put it in the oven, and you can use it immediately. I mixed these together with some of my existing green flock and then started to apply it liberally across the piece. Speaking of liberally, I like all of the imagery and lore around Tom Nook being a staunch capitalist, and I thought that it would be cool to give a nod to the No Kings protests that have been happening, kind of integrate that with Tom Nook being a dirty, stinky capitalist. Hindsight being 2020, I think that I should have actually used the airbrush to make this more look like spray paint on here, but I'm still happy with the way it turned out. Originally, I was just going to make the building and call it that. I figured with the sign it would be recognizable enough, but it just felt a little bit empty when I did that. I decided to make the mailbox and the sign that sits out front as well. These were extremely simple constructions, and I wanted to keep the details pretty light as well, because whenever I'm doing these small accent details that help remind you what the piece is fully, I always want them to be dumbed down a little bit so that they don't detract from what the actual focal point of the piece is supposed to be, which is the building, obviously. Let's all just ignore how horrible that Snape impression was and focus on the rest of the build. Let's just forget about it, forget it happened. For the wooden platform the building sits on, just a wooden rectangle, not a lot to explain there, not a lot to show there. For the other details, I went ahead and painted them up very simply, but I wanted to add something to give it a little bit more flavor. I have no idea where these stupid accents are coming from. This is what happens when you don't actually write a script and you just kind of go off the cuff. Anyways, I thought it would be cool to put some missing signs of some of the villagers, so I chose to do Marshall and Drake, because I thought they looked funny, and I thought the drawings would look funny in the size of my fingernail. I finished painting everything up, and then I decided I wanted to add another detail to these two accent pieces. Because I had done the No Kings tag, I thought it would be cool to incorporate a little bit more kind of graffiti things, so I made some mail sticker slabs that I put on the mailbox and some also on the board. I painted the base black, then I glued the sign in place, and I decided not to glue the building so that I could put a tea light inside of it and turn it on and off. And that's pretty much it, so on to the final shot. Anyways, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe so that I can hopefully escape my own personal Tom Nook in real life and get away from the capitalists and pursue my dream of making garbage on the internet.
Anyways, be sure to like and subscribe, drop a comment for the algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.